Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright.
Why I do it? I mean, there's like this huge.
I hope this is really good. Hey guys, welcome back to a new video where today I recently saw Last Night in Soho, which is by my favorite director, Edgar Wright. You know, you saw the clips from before from my previous videos talking about him. I was really excited for this movie, so I just thought, hey, once I make it, might as well rank all of Edgar Wright's films. And yeah, now keep in mind when I say all of his films, not really, because he also did a documentary earlier this year, talking about the band The Sparks. But it's a documentary, so I'm not really counting that. It's just, you know, I feel like documentaries kind of different from movies. He also did a independent film, I think, or student film. I don't know what the story is, but a movie called Fistful of Fingers, which I haven't seen, but it's not really. I'm fairly certain it wasn't a theatrical release. If so, it was very limited. So yeah, I'm just talking about his 6 films, 6 of some of my favorite films of all time: Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Baby Driver, and his newest film, Last Night in Soho. No reason to keep on going with the intro. Let's just get into it, starting with number 6. Coming in at number 6 is Shaun of the Dead. Now, this list was incredibly hard to pick from. I love all of Edgar Wright's films. So, but naturally, there has to be one at the bottom with the list like these. And Shaun of the Dead just never really hit the right spot, if that makes sense. Like, it never really felt as good as the other Edgar Wright's films. And this is his first, but that doesn't mean I don't like this movie. I love this movie. It's still a 9 out of 10 for me. But it's just, I don't know, it feels different for me. I've heard some people say that your viewing on the Edgar Wright's films, specifically with the Cornetto trilogy, is your ranking of them will probably rank how you would rank the genre. So, zombies, buddy cop, and sci-fi. And zombie movies just aren't really one of my things. I haven't really seen that much, but from what I've seen, it's just not one of my favorite genres of all time. But this probably gets an exception in that genre, because this movie is generally hilarious and pretty clever in a lot of sequences. Like that scene where Shaun goes to the store and like gets his can and the cornetto, and how it's mirrored twice. It's very impressive, especially for a first time filmmaker like Edgar Wright. Stuff like that really holds this movie afloat for me, and honestly, it's almost, I don't know how to describe it. Everyone here is great. I couldn't really list the performance that was off for me, though I'm pretty sure that's just with Edgar Wright, every Edgar Wright movie, if I'm being honest. And there's even a lot of emotional moments, like, well, spoilers, but when Shaun's mum dies, it's a generally emotional moment, and can even tear you up if that's what gets you, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of sad that I have to put this at the bottom of the list. But, I don't know, just, it feels different from other Edgar Wright film. But I still love it, just not as much as Edgar Wright's other films. Moving on to number 5. Coming in at number 5 is Last Night in Soho. Edgar Wright's newest film is a blast, honestly. This movie blew me away. I was worried going into this movie. Because I've heard some things about it, and a lot of people don't like this movie, and I was worried that it was just going to be disappointing. But I came out this movie, and I had to think for a long time. This movie really got my mental gears going, because, like, there's a lot to unpack here, at least for first viewing, and I've only seen this movie twice. I'm pretty sure I'm going to rewatch it soon, but this movie is a lot to unpack, but base feelings, the actresses and actors like Matt Smith, and of course the main two leads, Anna Taylor-Joy and Thomas Mackenzie, all phenomenal performances. I was blown away. I haven't really seen them in much. Like, Matt Smith is obviously Doctor Who, but I don't really watch Doctor Who. Anna Taylor-Joy I've seen in some things, but not a whole lot, but she's always great. And Thomas Mackenzie I've only seen in Jojo Rabbit. And she probably blew me she probably blew me away the most. And the story being told is really interesting, and I was really intrigued. And it's a nice little mystery going on here. And yeah, I just found myself really being entertained by this movie. And like, I can see why this movie is definitely not for everyone. I can say that fully hearted. Movie is not for everyone. In fact, I can see why a lot of people don't like the movie. But me personally, I had a really fun time with this movie. I wouldn't really say fun, because there's a lot of, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about when I say some stuff isn't fun. But just because it's not fun doesn't mean it's not good, and I think this movie is incredibly good, and I would just highly recommend it. I hope this movie does really well, because, it's not the biggest movie around, and it is kind of flopping at the moment, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I just hope this movie does incredibly well. The only problem I can really think of is the third act. It kind of slows down, and I like the stuff that happened to it. It just wasn't executed in the best way possible. But yeah, also, forgot to mention this, but there's a lot of effects, or at least if you watch Edgar Wright explain it, there's a lot of, like, effects shots, where, like, a lot of mirror shots, and you'll probably say at least one time while watching the movie, how did they do this? And it's really interesting how they did it. I won't go into it, but, like, all the mirror shots and all the lighting and all that, and, like, all the neon signs and the aesthetics, both modern and 60s, they're all phenomenal. And I think, and also the costuming, brilliant. It's amazing. And yeah, if you can't tell, I had a really good time with this movie, and I can't wait to rewatch it. But as it stands now, it's still number 5 because some problems with the third act. But nevertheless, this movie is phenomenal, and I would highly recommend it. Moving on to number 4. Coming in at number 4 is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This movie it excites me. The fact that someone saw this movie and it was like, yep, let's give it a massive budget, and let's just let this guy do whatever he wants, just surprises me and excites me so much. This movie just has a sense of energy that I don't get from a lot of movies. And I don't know, it just pumps me up, if that makes sense. Now, I have done a full review of this movie, but some stuff I just left out. This movie is hilarious. I don't know how I didn't mention this, but this movie makes me laugh every time I watch it. It's hilarious, probably one of the funniest movies I've seen, honestly. But yeah, this movie just, as I said, there's a review up on my channel if you want to get most of my thoughts down, because I'm not really remembering all of my thoughts right now. But put simply, this movie just, I can put it on whenever. That's the type of movie it is. It's like a movie where if someone put it up in the party, I would be like, okay, yep, just ignore what I'm doing. Scott Pilgrim is on, and I want to watch it right now. It doesn't matter what mood I'm in, I'll always be down for some Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Yeah, moving on to number 3. Coming in at number 3 is Hot Fuzz. Hell yeah. Now, this movie is so smart. Like, a lot of the things that happen in it just are so clever in the way that they're parodying action movies. Well, not parodying, it's more spoof, there's a difference. But just the way this movie plays out, it's so smart and brilliant, and I don't know what to say about this movie. It's hilarious. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are perfect in it. Everyone's perfect in it. And the whole final sequence is so well choreographed, and it's such a good, like, spoof of action movies while still being an action movie. And it's just so smart and brilliant with its ideas. And the fact that this movie was, like, made in less than... It was pretty fast production from what I've heard. So the fact that it turned out this good and on not a high budget as well, it honestly goes to show how much a budget can affect a film, because, well, sure, it can affect a film in big ways, but you don't need a big budget to make a good movie, and this is damn proof of it, because this movie is spectacular and hilarious. Like, I recently rewatched it for this video, and it makes me laugh as hard as a movie can. I don't know how to describe this movie without pointing out the obvious. This film is phenomenal, and yeah, also it's a nice little mystery, and even a good misdirect, and the gore is also really good, especially for, like, a pretty low budget movie, as I said. Good gore effects, and I love it when films have good gore effects, because it's just, especially when they're practical. When they have practical effects, what this movie does, it's really good. And yeah, not much to say about this movie. Hot Fuzz is amazing, and I was probably not the first, and I'll probably not be the last person to tell you that, because this movie is phenomenal, and I love it with all my heart. Coming in second place, number 2 is The World's End. Now, this is probably the most controversial pick in this list, in this ranking, because this movie is often kind of looked down upon. It's often said to be the worst of the Cornetto trilogy and just one of Edgar Wright's lowest. I heavily disagree. I love this movie. I didn't hear anything about it when I was going into it, and I think that's the best way to watch this movie. If you haven't watched this movie, stop watching now. Don't watch the trailer. Just watch it, because going into this movie completely blind, I was not expecting anything. So let's get into my viewing experience. When I watched this, So you get the opening, and I was thinking, oh, okay, The World's End is just a little joke, because that's the final pub name. And then it switches into sci-fi, and at first I was like, oh, this might not be good, but it switches greatly, and what makes it good is that it comes out of nowhere, and you don't expect it, unless you've seen the advertising, which gave it away, which I do not like. But this movie, it's just so underrated. I think it's possibly one of the most underrated movies of all time. That's genuinely what I think about this movie. I think it's just one of the most underrated movies of all time. And it's phenomenal. The performances are all great. It's, in my opinion, the funniest out of the Cornetto trilogy. This one makes me laugh the most out of all of them, and even of Edgar Wright's filmography.
Simon Pegg as Gary King is the best performance out of the Connery trilogy, and it's his best performance I've seen from him. He's just such a dick, but like he plays it so well, and it's what we're supposed to think of the character. And honestly, I could talk about so much about this movie, like the foreshadowing and the opening, and that whole opening sequence is a masterpiece. Like it's so good at like foreshadowing and just such a good setup for this movie. And oh my god, this movie is just so phenomenal, and it also is so emotional. It's not just this funny movie about these drunk men going through the apocalypse. No, it's generally emotional. Simon Pegg as Gary King has a big monologue near to the end of this movie
Coming in
about
second place, number 2 is
and
the
growing
world's
up and
end.
the night
Now, this is probably the most controversial pick in this list, in this ranking,
and
because
so
this movie is
I'm not afraid to admit it. I
looked down
cried
upon.
during
It's
that
often
moment, 'cause it's just,
said to be the
he's
worst
just
of
such
the
a good
Connery
and
trilogy,
underrated
and just
actor,
one of
but-
Edgar Wright's
and this
lowest.
movie is just so good and
I
underrated. And
heavily
could honestly
disagree.
talk about
I
this movie
love
all
this
day.
movie. I didn't hear
just-
anything about it when I was
All
going
of these
into
movies,
it.
I don't know what to say, because
And I think
all
that's
of
the
them are
best way to
phenomenal,
watch this
and I'm just
movie. If
saying
you
that
haven't
they're
watched this
phenomenal.
movie, stop
And
watching
honestly,
now.
this
Don't watch the
was
trailer.
my
Just
number one
watch
for
it, because
the
it's
longest
going into this
time.
movie
I'm
completely
not even
blind.
joking.
I was not expecting
And even then,
anything.
it tied with my number one
So
for
let's
the
get
longest
into
time. But
my viewing experience.
had
When
to
I
go,
watched this,
I had to make a choice.
So you
for
get the
number
opening,
one,
and I was thinking,
picked
oh, okay, the world.
Baby Driver. Hell yes. This movie just excites me. I've said that about Scott Pilgrim. I need to find new words in my vocabulary. But this movie, I don't know how to describe it. I first watched it expecting a good movie, and what I got was one of my new favorite movies of all time. This is easily top 5 movies of all time for me. I'm not even joking. Let's just start with the bass front. The soundtrack to this movie, phenomenal. Possibly the best soundtrack in a movie I've ever heard, and I'm not even joking. Like, the only soundtracks I can think that can rival it is like a James Gunn movie, like Guardians of the Galaxy. But this movie, it's just exciting. It's a movie like Scott Pilgrim, but even more so in this case, I could watch any time. This is like a comfort movie for me, which is ironic since there's a lot of like suspenseful moments in it. But this movie is just amazing at what it does. And it's just such a well directed and well written and well acted and well choreographed sequence. All the driving sequences are phenomenal. All of like the camera work, phenomenal. This movie, phenomenal. And the fact that all like the gunshots and sound effects line up with the music that's happening in the scene, it just sounds so nice, and it's phenomenal. And why can't more films be like Baby Driver? And I'm also excited for the sequel. It's a bit unnecessary, but it's at least going to be written by Edgar Wright, and he hasn't disappointed me. And I feel like there's any direction you could go with the Baby Driver sequel. But just talking about the first film, and also the romantic chemistry between Ansel Elgort and Deborah, forgot the actress's name, but Baby and Deborah have such good chemistry. It's phenomenal. This movie is so well paced. I feel like I haven't talked about the pacing in a lot of these movies because they're really well paced, but this movie especially just goes by so quick without you even noticing. And spoilers, go watch this movie. But Buddy being the real villain and Baby killing bats, and then it revealing, and then Darling dies, and then Buddy is the main villain, is such a good misdirect and such a good villain. And a lot of people don't like the twist, but I watched the video, I can't remember the name of it, but it basically describes how Buddy is like the opposite of Baby. It's Baby transformed into a bad guy, and Darling is Buddy's Deborah. And it's a really good and interesting take that I didn't even notice, but rewatching it, yeah, you can definitely see how Buddy is like the anti-Baby, or like, that's a weird sentence. But yeah, and obviously there's, Kevin Spacey, which, well, um, but yeah, let's not get into this. I don't even know why I mentioned it. But yeah, this movie just, it fills me up with so much energy and happiness that, of course, it's my number one. The only thing that comes close is The World's End, but this movie, it's just more rewatchable, I think, and that's another thing with Edgar Wright. All of his films are rewatchable. But I think this one could possibly the most rewatchable. That's hard to distinguish since they're all rewatchable, but yeah, this movie just has such a likable protagonist and such good characters and such a good and fine plot. A lot of Edgar Wright's filmography has been labeled as style over substance, and while I don't mind that, this movie doesn't lack substance. It has a great plot while also maintaining a phenomenal style. But yeah, it's hard to talk about movies that, like, I love all of his movies, so it's just hard to talk about them in rapid order. But yeah, Baby Driver is my number one when it comes to Edgar Wright's filmography. But you know what? That could easily change within like a year, less than a year even. This list was shifting gears, pun intended, before I even watched Last Night in Soho, and I thought I had it solved, and then Last Night in Soho came in and got reworked again. But yeah, this movie is phenomenal. All of Edgar Wright's filmography is phenomenal. Go check out Edgar Wright, but if you only have time for one, watch Baby Driver.
So there you have it. That's my ranking of Edgar Wright's filmography. Now, keep in mind, this was an incredibly hard list for me to come up with. As I said, Edgar Wright is my favorite director of all time, and this video, the list while going to Last Night in Soho was shifting constantly, even when I first watched his films. Like, I watched Scott Pilgrim vs. The World's End, and Baby Driver all in the same week. The first time viewing those movies in the same week. And those three movies were switching constantly. At some point I just made it a tie between those three. And I was going to make it a tie between The World's End and Baby Driver. But I felt like, no, just gotta give a definitive list. And after thinking about it for a long time, eventually came down to Baby Driver. But yeah, guys, this was honestly one of the funnest videos I got to make, I guess. I don't really know, but just talking about Edgar Wright, it feels nice, because as I've mentioned multiple times, he's my favorite director of all time. And as you can see, his films spark so much joy for me, and I'll definitely watch his next film in cinemas. Yeah, not much to say other than if you haven't seen Edgar Wright's films, go watch them. They're totally worth it. Even if you don't really like them, you can still get some enjoyment out of them, I feel. Yeah, guys, what's your list of Edgar Wright films if you've seen them? What's your thoughts on Edgar Wright? Do you hate him as a director? Do you love him like I do? Put them in the comments below, and let's just have a discussion. And yeah, I guess I'll just see you guys next time. Bye-bye.